Welcome to Asia Briefing Podcast Series. My name is Israel America Jones, the Marketing Manager for the North China region. Today with me is Chet Scheltema, the Business Development Manager for Dezan Shira Associates in Beijing office. Dezan Shira Associates is a specialist foreign direct investment practice, providing business advisory, accounting, payroll, and tax services to companies investing in Asia. Today we're going to discuss Chet's recent trip through the U.S., visiting San Francisco, San Diego, New York, Dallas, and Houston, and a presentation that he gave discussing indirect taxes in China. Chet, can you introduce some of the cities and companies that you visited in the U.S. and maybe some of the main topics that were discussed during your meetings?
Hi, Israel. Our goal was to visit some of our partners in the U.S., including members of the Leading Edge Alliance. It's an alliance of accounting firms globally, and a number of those firms are located in the U.S. We wanted to touch base with them, thank them for working with us and investors in China, and find out what was on their mind. Another group of people that we met with were individual companies and their leaders, each of which had different problems or different issues that they had on their mind related to their China investments. Some were just starting up their investments in China and wanted to talk about how to proceed. Some had encountered unique problems and wanted to talk through those with us.
During those meetings, I'm sure that there are many questions that came up, but before we get to those questions, I'm interested in hearing more about your presentation at the Bloomberg BNA in San Francisco that was discussing China legal, tax, and accounting updates. This happened on March 19th, 2013, and Chet presented on indirect taxes in China.
The Bloomberg BNA CITE conferences are a prestigious forum for investors in East Asia and other areas to hear the latest information on financial matters, legal matters, accounting and tax matters. So this forum it's held annually, and this one was held in San Francisco, and there were a number of very prominent companies and industries represented, and it was a chance to get the latest information on what's going on in China. One of the latest developments in China relates to value-added tax reform. China is undergoing a complete overhaul in its tax regime, and it's moving from a dual system of business tax and value-added tax to a singular system of value-added tax.
Why is it so important to be discussing the value-added tax at this seminar in San Francisco?
As I mentioned, one of the reasons is just because of the countrywide change in the tax regime, moving from business tax and value-added tax to a singular system of value-added tax. So any companies investing in China need to understand better the value-added tax system and the implications on their business structures, how it's going to affect their margins. A reason why it's of particular interest to our clients in the U.S. is because so many are unfamiliar with a value-added tax system. Europeans have some familiarity, Americans very little, so it was important to include that subject in this seminar.
You mentioned the European value-added tax. Is China's value-added tax the same as Europe's value-added tax?
There are some similarities between the European systems and the Chinese system. Value-added tax, as you probably know, is a transactional tax. It occurs on transactions between companies. It's not a tax on their profits. European countries have long had a value-added tax system. China is now borrowing in some ways the European model, but it has its own unique, shall we say, Chinese characteristics. One reason why it's important for Americans to understand the value-added tax system in China is because it requires intensive management and oversight. In some ways, it's a little bit archaic. You need actual physical fapiaos, and you need to manage those physical fapiaos throughout your business operations in order to obtain the benefits of a value-added tax system. So for Americans who are not used to managing, maintaining, and using physical invoices and receipts, it's a bit of a surprise.
With these physical receipts that you need for China's value-added tax, do companies that are interested in benefiting from this value-added tax need to have regional offices set up in China?
So we're diving a little bit into some of the details of the value-added tax system. Maybe to give a little background, I can just introduce it briefly. Value-added tax system allows companies to use their input VAT tax as an offset or a deduction against their offset value-added tax. And if they manage that process well and the timing is managed well, they can significantly reduce their value-added tax burden. Now, there are other issues to keep in mind. Each branch office of a company in China needs to manage its own VAT invoice system. The company headquarters will have its own. Now, a company in a branch in China can consolidate for corporate income tax purposes, but not for VAT purposes. In addition, as each just has to manage its own system, each has to apply for value-added tax, general taxpayer status. So all of these processes are a little bureaucratic, and it's possible to manage them, but you have to plan ahead and you have to understand it'll be labor intensive and management intensive.
From your travels, I'm interested in hearing maybe a common theme or a common question that people in the U.S. were asking about China.
We talked to quite a few different companies in different industries. Each has its own peculiarity and its own concerns and issues. I think many were interested in just trying to understand how easy it is to operate in the Chinese business environment. So that led us to interesting discussions around culture, about law, about the new Chinese government, about the future prospects of growth in the Chinese economy. Many times we had very interesting discussions. But in terms of one common theme, a little bit hard to identify one, other than just to say that Dezan Shira is a company that provides integrated services in tax, accounting, and legal. So many of our clients were very eager to jump in and have some free technical advice about how to manage issues in China around these subjects. It was really quite a treat to see such a broad variety of companies, including in industries like the California wine industry, in the musical instruments industry, private equity firms eager to jump into China and East Asia, all the way to large technical companies and technology companies. So we met some really high quality individuals from some very big named companies. It was a good time to network, to meet so many interesting people, and to have a great time chatting about China and doing business in China.
Thank you for those closing remarks. If this podcast has sparked your interest to learn more about doing business in China or Asia, we encourage you to look at Dezan Shira Associates website that can provide specialists to further discuss these issues in person. Thank you very much, and look forward to having you join us again at Asia Brief.